Hello and welcome to this video with me, Delphi. In this video, I'm going to offer you an assertive phrase that you can use if someone says something you disagree with and you might need to have a conversation that counts. You may have been in a situation with someone where someone you care about has said something potentially egregious, offensive, or just something you completely disagree with. In those moments, because it's a relationship that you care about, you might be tempted to either shut down or potentially even offer a you phrase along the lines of, "You're wrong." The problem with shutting down means that you probably haven't had a chance to say what you wanted to say. You haven't had the chance to say why you see things differently. And you might walk away from that conversation feeling like, I wish I'd said that, or I should have said something. And that can have an impact on our well-being. Similarly, if we turn around to someone and say, "You're wrong," there's a good chance they might become defensive. And instead of being interested in what you have to say, they're now going to tell you how they think and how they feel about the situation. When we're using an assertive communication style, we often speak from the I position. I think, I need, I feel. It demonstrates that we're taking responsibility for what we're about to say, that we're not putting any pressure on the other person to hear us, but in the hope that they're potentially interested so that we can open a two-way dialogue. So if we found ourselves in front of someone we care about and they've just said something potentially that we're not okay with, we might need to use an assertive phrase to help us decide whether or not that conversation should continue. This is where the phrase, "I see things differently," might be useful. With the phrase, "I see things differently," you're now in a position to hear what the other person has to say. It also allows us to understand what the other person's motivation might be. If, for example, you turn around to someone who's just said something offensive or something you don't agree with, and you say, "I see things differently," and they reply with, "How do you see it then?" you know that potentially they're interested in how you feel and what you think, and it opens a two-way dialogue. You might still disagree on the points being made, but at least you've both had an opportunity to air your views. If, on the other hand, the person responds to "I see things differently" with "I don't care what you think," or "I don't care how you see things," that potentially tells us something about their motivation and can form part of an aggressive communication style. Generally speaking, aggressive communicators try to establish control quite quickly. There are times when that can be useful, like in an emergency, for example, but otherwise it can serve to shut a conversation down. Now, if the conversation does go in the direction of the person we're speaking with saying, "I don't care how you see things," we might decide to just prioritise our safety, including our physical and our emotional safety, and in that moment adopt a passive communication style where we say something along the lines of, "Okay then, fair enough." We might also decide to adopt what's known as the stuck record technique, where you might just keep repeating, "I see things differently," until perhaps they get the point and consider that there is another way of thinking and they potentially ask what your opinion is. Remember though to always prioritise your safety, and in that moment you have the choice to decide what happens next. If you decide that you want to take the conversation further, you might think about how you can do that at another time or in another space, but you could also just decide to walk away from the conversation if it feels like the safest thing to do.